Perhaps, Sarah, you could give me a heads up when we're good to go.
We are live now.
Thank you. With that, then we will get underway and we'll call the meeting to order and welcome members of council, staff, and all public people that have been able and are joining us this evening for this meeting, and to our consultants. Approval of the agenda. Special Committee of the Whole agenda, July 28th, 2021. The recommended action is that the Special Committee of the Whole agenda for July 28th, 2021 be approved as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Cinema and Councillor Mayat, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Number 3 is a declaration of pecuniary interests, if anyone so has, so declare, if not, at the appropriate time. 4, moving on, presentations and delegations, all sections, and we start this evening with a presentation from Steve Langlois of Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, read the Arena and Recreation Center study. And so with that, I will pass it on to you, Steve.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council, members of the public. I'm just going to share the screen. I'll jump right in if I could. I appreciate being right at the top of the agenda. Great. So we're very pleased to present the final Arena and Recreation Center study for council's receipt and guidance tonight. You'll notice, I'll mention off the top, you'll notice some similar content to what was provided and presented to council last month. I think we were in front of you on June the 9th. We want to make sure for those new that might be joining us from the public and any councillors that had regrets to that meeting that they have the same information, or similar information, I should say. And we do have some updates to present along the way as well. And just the last piece I'll mention before I get started, I do have Victor's Young Collins with MJMA attending as well. He won't be participating in the presentation, but is available for any questions that might be posed by council as we go through the agenda here. So I'll jump right in. A little bit about the study. Again, we were tasked with taking a closer look at the Penetanguishene Memorial Community Center and Penetanguishene Curling Club, recognizing that these are both aging facilities and require investment. So in short, it's a strategy to move forward. What does the future look like? And when we say future, it's not 5 to 10 years, it's really 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years in the future, because that's been the lifespan that you've gotten out of your current facilities. And as I'll unpack in a moment, you'll see sort of why we're doing this work now. But essentially, the study looks to answer 3 key questions. What facilities are needed, recognizing that the needs of the community have changed substantially since the 50s and 60s and 70s when these facilities were initially built. How do we get there? So we look at things like different facility provision options, timing, location, partnerships, and then certainly costs, construction costs, operating costs. And there's a menu of choices that are still available to you. We're not asking council to commit to a funding strategy tonight. That's work that, as you'll see in a moment, will come with time, but this gives us a starting point for having an informed discussion. So a little bit about the arena itself. Built in 54, has had additions in 83 and 2007. It's a single ice surface. It's not regulation size, so it's undersized compared to modern arenas and other arenas that most of junior teams and others will be playing on. It is a well-used facility. We don't want to just focus just on ice. We also recognize it's a well-loved facility for other sports like ball hockey and a little bit of lacrosse. Now, given its age, many parts of it are still original or are aging. So there's been substantial engineering reports around what the facility itself might require. Those suggest about $6 million in repairs and replacement in today's dollars. And as we sort of accelerate that a little bit forward and include some capital costs some soft costs, that figure becomes a little bit higher. Structurally, It's not falling down today, which is the good news. So you have some time to make some decisions around this, but overall the building condition is poor. And what that suggests is there's a need for either some substantial investment moving forward, working within the bounds of the facility itself, or starting to look at other options. And we know there are not many options that we have on the current site. The footprint is largely what it can be. It's not indicative of a modern multi-use community center, although it does have some meeting rooms and your Brian Orser Hall, and it's not completely barrier-free for persons with disabilities. The curling club itself is a little bit newer, so 1974. So that would make it about 47 years old this year, and it is town-owned. The club itself operates it through a lease agreement, and it's as well as a condition has a poor rating, requires less in terms of repairs and replacement, and similar to the arena, the expansion and upgrading potential is highly limited. And as we've talked about in the report, we have council direction through your community strategic plan that it's located in a high leverage location on the Penetanguishene waterfront. And there's a direction from council at that time to consider alternate uses and a possible relocation of that facility. Now, I mentioned some new material. So when we were last in front of council, it was to provide them an update on the draft study at that time. I'll start with the last bullet and I'll move up, but we had an open house. We hosted a virtual open house late last month that was widely circulated. There were a number of written submissions, and we had around 20 people that attended that session. I mentioned written submissions. There's also been, every stakeholder group has been reached out to in your community to provide input in phase 1 and in subsequent phases of the study. And there was an open house that, again, virtual, as we were sort of between, I think, waves 2 and 3 last year, that we had to move online, and 150 households provided response to that. From our June open house, there are 2 graphs and 2 points that I want to put in front of you, and these are really consistent with what we heard during earlier phases of the project as well. So this is not an outlier. Your community is looking for a number of facilities. Certainly they want to maintain access to an ice rink. Some of them, about half of those that were attending the previous session are also interested in a second ice pad that doesn't currently exist in the community. But there's other things that you don't have that most communities are moving towards through their new recreation center builds, including a gymnasium, indoor walking track, and then certainly other amenities that would round that out. The Sports Hall of Fame has been a big supporter of this initiative, and the community is a big supporter of theirs as well. A large hall space and a curling facility potentially. We're finding support for that in a new build. I'll unpack the 4 options in a little bit more detail on a subsequent slide. But what you'll see when we went out to the public is, what was the preference after a pretty fulsome and comprehensive presentation, so they could understand what was being considered. 80%, 4/5 endorsed the new build, and another 85% if you include sort of the partial build, and 100% if you include the hybrid option. And all 3 options, what those have in common is moving away from the current arena to build a new arena of one design or another. So that's what we heard last month, and I thank all members of council that attended that session. So as has been sort of a steady drumbeat through the study that we've heard from the start, we know the town is committed to building a healthy community and fostering active lifestyles. A new multi-use community center and recreation center is supported by previous planning, whether it be your master plan or your community strategic plan, done more recently in 2019. The community is supportive of a new facility with modern amenities, such as that indoor walking track, program space, and gymnasium, They've indicated that they want this sooner than later. That was one of the key concerns, was timing. We had indicated that it will take time for this to come together. And we know that multi-use recreation centers offer many benefits, such as year-round program opportunities for all ages and a facility that is accessible, convenient, and efficient. So the study that's in front of you, and you know, we won't cover all of it today, certainly, but there's about 100 pages of pretty in-depth analysis. We looked at facility needs. We validated that using an evidence-based approach. We looked at your current demographics. We looked at your population growth. We considered how users are presently and how your residents and your sport organizations are presently using these spaces and what that might mean moving forward as trends in sport evolves. And we were able to support these items in the box on the left. A single ice pad with up to 1,000 seats, and you'll see the options really range from about 500 or 600 up to 1,000 when we start looking at those costs. An indoor walking track, multi-purpose space, and then this is a variety of spaces of dry land area that can support anything from meetings, community meetings, events, festivals, Winterama, different programs, and to active sports from basketball, volleyball, pickleball, and other functions in between. Sports Hall of Fame, possibly some tenant space like a pro shop, concession, support spaces, town staff offices. These are all necessary items that you would consider in a new build. Ideally, it has an opportunity for future expansion space, something that you don't have at your present locations, and may have an interface of some sort with outdoor, whether it be, you know, anything from a playground to other types of community amenities. Those were not studied in detail through this process. So these are the base components that we've included in all of the new build options. We also mentioned curling. Curling has been consulted throughout various phases of the study. So they've been informed of what those options might be. And you know, they've indicated an interest to continue to consider those options. But this is not the intent of this phase. Is not to negotiate any agreements or to bind any one party to moving forward with us. So we have included some options that would allow for that curling facility to be replaced within a new build. And or to make it convertible to a second ice pad. And that's part of the other discussion that I'd be happy to have if there are any questions on that about, you know, what the future might bring and potential demand for a second ice pad, because we have identified that, but it's pretty far off in the future. So as mentioned earlier, there were 4 key options that were advanced as part of the study. The first one, we always, you know, this is definitely one that was on the table and was looked at closely, is renovation. So stay where you're at, but put money into the existing facilities and continue largely in a status quo perspective. Options 2A and 2B both involve a new build. One would include both replacement of the PMCC and the PCC, that's 2A, and 2B would just be replacement of the PMCC, leaving curling in place for the time being with an uncertain future. And the option 3 is a hybrid option, would have us rebuilding, replacing the PMCC as part of a larger multi-use center. And then if council feels that there's a need to reclaim that waterfront space on a more short-term horizon, being able to move the curling club into the existing arena, we see that as a stopgap. We don't see that as a long-term solution. The building itself is still aging, still has repair needs, so it would have investment required, but it depends on the number of moving pieces that you might have at any point in time. So I'll unpack the costs in a little bit of detail, but before doing so, I think it's important to just understand what we're talking about and what stage of the project that we're at. Anything that you see in the report, these are Class D estimates. This is the widest and most variable and less detailed level of estimates that you will see. They tend to range from Class A being, we're going to tender and we're very firm on this, B, C, to D. So there's a larger contingency applied to these, plus or minus 20%. Any dollars that you see are in current year dollars, 2021, and do not account for escalation, meaning if you do this in 2025, 2027, there would be some inflationary factors that you would need to account for. A little bit about the current construction market. It's quite the active market. You know, we've all seen and heard stories of the prices of wood and lumber. Same really goes for trades and other materials. So we're, as Victor's is finding, there's a lot of projects that are out for tender right now, but until we really see you know, what those have to bear, it's an active market. So we've chosen to be conservative in the approach to this, rather than sort of paint a pretty picture that may not be achievable. These are full project costs. It includes everything from the consultants involved to construction, to some amount for site developments, and even things like furnishing and fixtures. It would not include, again, that inflationary factor, and would not include land and any unanticipated site costs. You know, if you find out you're building on a brownfield site, for example. Hopefully that's not the case. Other circumstances we know that could impact the components that you ultimately choose to move forward with this is, you know, if there is a change in availability of other facilities in the region potentially, and the sustainability of local clubs. And you know, this is sort of, you know, if we look at different partners like the Hall of Fame or curling, more discussions need to be had with potential partners to discuss their needs and willingness to participate. And any design concepts that you see are preliminary. They're just there to sort of show facility fit, what it might look like in terms of massing on a site, and would be subject to change as you fine tune what site it would go on, what components would be included, and you would always have more consultation with the residents and community groups on what that specifically looks like to match with their needs. So I won't spend a lot of time on the operating costs, but needless to say that that's all documented in the report. There would be an annual increase in the cost because as much as some systems would be more efficient, under most of these options, there's more space that's required for utility. You know, so you have to heat that space, cool it, and make it functional. But those are detailed in the report. The capital costs really range from anywhere from about 7.1 million for the renovation. Again, this is like for like. You're not upgrading. You're just continuing to deal with life cycle amenities. You're replacing the roof, which may need to be done one way or the other, given the timing. But you're replacing the ice slab, the boards, and you're keeping that facility operational until such time as it becomes unsustainable. And there's no crystal ball on that. But 1954, we know it is one of the older arenas in the province. And we've seen various scenarios in other communities where, you know, with any type of facility, the older it gets and the more investment that's required and the more unreliable certain aspects of it become. The other options, obviously the partial new build is going to be your cheaper new build option because it does not include curling or that second ice sheet. So that comes in around 36.7 million. I'm just working on escalating costs here. The hybrid option would be the next one. It's in the ballpark of 41.5. And then the new build itself is anywhere between 44.7 and $49.1 million. And the reason for those variations are really in terms of things like seating costs or seating amounts. So I think Councillor Cummings had a question at our last meeting. The more basic option, which would be the 44.7, that included about 500 to 600 seats, spectator seats in the main arena enclosure. It was on one level, and you know, the second ice pad would have been designed more for curling, which brings the square footage down a little bit. The higher of those options, and there's other ones in between, but it offers expanded seating, which is closer to your current amount of about 1,000 seats. It's on two levels, so we talk about sort of a concourse area above. So that increases costs. That's the reason for those differences. So I'll start to wind down a little bit here based on those options and what you'd be looking for should you choose to move to a new build or partial new build. We looked at a number of different sites. 4 hectares was determined to be the minimum size that would be required to support the facility and associated on-ground parking. That's about 10 acres, and there were 4 sites that met that criteria. Those are listed and shown on the attached slide. The former PSS, that's the Penetang Secondary School, which is now in municipal ownership, scored the highest and is recommended for the recreation center. And from what we've heard from the public, seems to be strongly supported as a new site. So based on all the above, our recommendations, our primary recommendation was to pursue the development of a new multi-use recreation center. That would be option 2A, whether it's 2A, B, that's work and decisions that still need to be made as you go through this process. And we'd like to see that at the former PSS site. So there's a few things that need to come together to enable that recommendation. You would need to continue with plans to replace the PMCC roof and other necessary life cycle projects. That recognizes that this is not going to happen overnight, as much as we've heard from members of the public that they want it sooner than later. The reality of doing the job right requires time and requires the right pieces to be and steps to be undertaken at the right juncture. So, we've indicated our opinion is it's probably a 5-year time horizon. Could very well be longer depending on other aspects and decisions of council. The second one would be to really develop and fine tune the funding strategy and to establish a capital reserve that helps to chip away at what the ultimate cost may be. And when we say funding strategy, I believe I do have a couple more slides on that in a moment. So I'll set that aside for a moment, but we're just really talking about different ways to secure the capital funding necessary to make this a reality. Third would be to establish a building committee to oversee the project that would have representation from staff and council and potentially others in the community. And they would help to drive some of the fundraising and other key elements that would be required. Need to determine the level of involvement from the curling club and other major partners. You may even solicit proposals from other prospective partners that might be interested in participating in one way, shape, or form. And then when it comes time, should you move to a new build, it would be to close the existing facilities as ICE venues. So you're not keeping both of them open. You're rather moving activities over to the new build. And any option for those lands would need to be considered through a subsequent public process. So we do have a few slides, and again, I can come back to these if there's any specific questions, but this just gives you a sense of what a 4 hectare, 10 acre site might look like with parking stalls and one of the 2A new build, full build options. So you see it would have potentially an ice rink, a curling rink. The gymnasium is the orange block to the bottom, and other meeting rooms and support amenities, including Sports Hall of Fame and others are in that. Certainly the ice from a bird's eye view is the dominant floor area. These just show the same option from different perspectives. And some sample images from other builds that are fairly recent that have similar amenities to what's being proposed here. And there's many different ways that the design can be put together, certainly, but you'll get a feel for what that public space looks like and how users and spectators and other active users of the facility can be engaged throughout the various spaces, whether it be through ice, through the hallways, the corridors, the gymnasiums, the walking tracks, the banquet halls, the fitness studios, and things of that nature. So I mentioned just a little bit more on potential funding sources, so that you have a sense of this is sort of our bridge as you look to move to this stage of the work. Is, you know, where, because the price tag is notable, no doubt about that. All communities that are looking at new facilities are looking at these sorts of dollars. So they're looking at various sources to make sure that this works for their taxpayers. So we've mentioned capital reserves. You could do some sort of modest capital surcharge on user fees. Certainly grants are in the news lately and have been really the necessary for many communities to move forward with major capital projects like this. These are from the province and the federal government in particular. Development charges from growth-related capital, and certain aspects of this facility would be growth-related. Fundraising campaign, certainly debentures and financing, and rates are quite low right now. So I guess that's, if there is a silver lining, that would be one of them. Contributions from other partners, including nearby municipalities, and you have had some of those in the past. There's a history of shared service delivery and shared financial contributions from other municipalities in North Simcoe. Potentially proceeds from land sales. Again, we're not suggesting that's necessarily in play here, but other communities have used that successfully to help to offset other costs. And taxes are always there, but I think that's just to be fulsome, needs to be considered as one of the tools in the toolbox. So our report does not identify where these funding sources or what percentages would be applied to each of these. This is a next phase of work that needs to be completed to help council and the community understand what scenarios might be in play. So just to wrap up, looking ahead, we know that the existing facilities are aging and have noted limitations. By planning ahead, the town has the opportunity to build the facility where they want, when they want, and how they want to serve the community for the next 50 years. The study now makes the project grant ready. There may be additional work that needs to come to help inform that, such as the long-term financial plan. And the funding strategy would draw from a variety of sources is needed, as just noted. Potential tax impacts are not yet known. We realize it could take several years to build the new facility. A building committee should be formed to help guide the project forward. Additional consultation will be required with the community on location, facility design, as well as discussions with potential partners. And certainly, last but not least, council would continue to be involved at any key decision points, including decisions related to location, funding, design, operation, and more. So I'll just leave this up. This is not our recommendation, although it's fairly consistent with what we had put forward. But I think it's a nice reminder of what council has in front of them. This is the staff recommendation that's in your council agenda, and I'll let staff speak to that or council speak to that if they wish. But they're looking for the study to be received for information, for staff to be directed to invest time in planning of the option 2A new build that includes curling, and to return to committee of the whole with further information as relates to long-term financial planning. So with that, I'll stop the screen share. I want to thank you for your patience and for your time and your guidance through the project. Between myself and Victor's, I would hope we can take your comments and respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Steve. Again, a very precise and concise report. I have to commend your company on a job well done. And with that, I will ask members of council or even members of the public if anyone has any questions through to Steve or Victor. Councillor Vladimir.
Thank you. Good presentation, and thank you for the slide deck. It was included as part of our agenda. And I remember a few years ago with respect to the curling club that one of the points that was made is that in order to host major bonspiels, the town would, the curling club would require seating as part of that requirement. And I just looking at the plans, and I didn't notice any with respect to that. I know Councillor Cummings is an avid curler. It may have come up through the conversations at section or before, but I was just wondering what the plans were for that and whether that had been taken into consideration and there was an alternative being thought of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Your Worship. Any of the 2A options would have included curling in one design or another. One of them was very curling specific, so we would have to look at the very minute details of that at this stage to say whether or not it was wide enough for that. But depending on the amount of seating that you're looking at, I would say we're in the ballpark of what might be required there, especially if you're looking at some modest, some bleacher seating along either side. That may be an option. Options, a couple of the other options in 2A considered oversizing it as a curling facility so that it may have the potential to serve as a hockey rink in the future. And what that really means is there's more space involved in either of those options. I think certainly fitting in banks of seating would have the potential to fit within those options. I'll look to Vic. I don't know if you have anything further on that to add.
Thanks, Steve. Completely possible to have the curling facility have seating. One of the issues of seating is that every row of seating likely adds maybe up to 100 spectators, but it adds some structural width to the facility. That's a long span structure, so it's that's a structural premium. So that I think would be one of the initial program goals to specify the number of seats required, and then we would work hard to get the most efficient structural configuration for that. Of course, we don't want obstructed view seats with columns in front of them, but we want to have the most efficient facility. Steve, I remember in the reviewing the existing one too, we looked at how during the tournament where that was modified for television and for running a camera apron, that took up one of the sheets to be able to accommodate some of that activity. So just a program question: how many sheets and spectator capacity, and we can certainly design for that.
So, Councillor Vedebalker, that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. It does. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else on council, members of council, that would have questions through to Steve or Victor? Okay, I don't see anyone. Sarah, do we have anyone in our audience that would like to partake or ask questions?
We do have members of the public in the audience. If anybody from the public wants to make a comment, I encourage you to put your camera on, or you can use the chat feature and type it to the group.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, again, I see no one, so we will move on with our. Okay, Denise Steves, I see.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Denise.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a question about the rink, and then why are we going towards one rink? Because I remember on the last call, there was somebody, I don't know if he was a coach or what he was, because you have things like house league hockey and you have your rep hockey, of course, figure skating and family skating, is one rink enough for this community? This is the question.
Steve, comment, or Victor?
I can. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. This has been, this has been a bit of a public debate. I think it was even a bit of a debate when you were doing your recreation master plan a number of years ago. We looked at how the current facility is used, what the projection might be for the sport, what the projection might be for youth in your community, and it's really a slow build in terms of demand. The number of youth, and this is not just Penetang that's dealing with this, but the number of youth are not increasing as fast as the rest of the population. So while your town may be growing, the demand for ice sports, particularly youth ice sports, is growing at a much slower pace. Currently, it is used to capacity. To be able to justify a second ice pad, though, you would really look for your current user base to increase by at least 50%. To be able to sort of justify moving into that extra ice sheet and offering those primetime hours. And it's not just the primetime hours that need to be used. You need to, for a sustainable operation, you need to look at those shoulder hours, daytime hours to some degree. So we fully recognize that there's current pressure on the rink. And when we say current, we're really looking at sort of pre-COVID numbers. Things are a little bit different now. There's still demand, but programmatically it's different. And we expect that pressure to continue. Our plan does look for a potential long-term requirement for a second ice pad. That's 15, 20 years down the road though. And so we've reflected that need by including two options that have a second ice pad, a conversion option from curling to other team sports, and as well for having some expansion space on a site that can accommodate that type of expansion. But it's just really a numbers game at this point. There's a need for 300 additional kids within minor ice sports to really support that second ice pad, and the evidence isn't there to support that right now.
Okay, well, that's fair. Sorry, I got two more questions. When you talk about gymnasium, are you just talking about something with hoops in it and a big space? Is that what you're talking about, gymnasium, or are you talking about a gym that has treadmills and weights and that sort of thing?
No, we're talking more about the former. So it would be, if you think of your high school gymnasium with a wood sprung floor, potentially a wood sprung floor, and some lines on it, and with basketball hoops, volleyball nets, and so on.
My concern with that is, I did a Zoom class over at the Midland Y, and they have this massive space, and there's like 8 women doing a Zoom class in a space that's, could house a couple of hundred people basically. So I'm just wondering how many people would have to use that in order to recoup the dollars spent to even build that. I guess that's my.
Through your worship, they're high demand spaces because a number of different sports and activities can occur within them. Right now, if you were taking a Zoom class right now, capacity restrictions are in place, so that could be part of it. But we would not really be looking for a yoga class to use that space. We would rather that they use more of a fitness studio, a classroom size space that would be more appropriate for that. The gymnasium itself would be better for basketball, pickleball use, volleyball, badminton. Those are certainly active sports, but it could be a meeting venue. It could be a conference venue. It could be a place for luncheons and for different events of that sort. So most communities are having challenges getting into schools that they're not available on a reliable basis. And this helps to provide support some of those growing sports.
I don't know. You haven't sold me on that, because I just think, 10 people playing pickleball is not going to pay for that. That's my only, I just think, as people get older, they need things like weights and treadmills and because that's going to give them good bone strength, that kind of thing. And a walking track too. It's okay, but that's still not where we should be pushing it, but I get where you're coming from. And then the last
Okay.
thing now, which is the four-letter word is pool. You haven't even mentioned it. Even on the last call, there were several people on that actually favored a pool, but you never even mentioned it tonight. So I just don't.
No, and thank you for bringing it up. It was something that we looked at, and we didn't find the local demand for that. We found interest for it, but interest and demand, we find, are two different things. There's currently an existing partnership with the Waypoint Center. There's access to a therapeutic pool at Georgian Manor. And there is the YMCA in nearby Midland. Now, each of those facilities on their own has their own access challenges. We don't dispute that. But for a community of your size, most communities don't start adding indoor pools because of the high operational costs and the challenges with lifeguarding and year-round usage until they hit around 35 or 40,000 people population-wise. And that's not a threshold that Penetangwisheen is at. That all of that said, we don't see it as priority, but would be able to, if we're able to plan for some expansion potential on the site, a multi-use recreation center would be the ideal place for that. Should council choose down the road to move in that direction. So. I know it's not the answer that many in the community wish to hear, but there are other options we find for that in the community, and the costs and usage profiles don't make it a priority in our minds.
Okay, thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
With that, we will move on. I don't see anyone else, again, Steve and Victor, job well done. And I might ask our Director of Recreation, Sherry, if she has perhaps some closing remarks for these two gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just reiterate what I've said before, and what you just mentioned is that we were quite satisfied with and confident in their abilities, their qualifications, the consultation that they've done, and the clear and concise information that the consultants have provided. We have felt like we've been in good hands throughout this process, and we're just very appreciative of the services that they've rendered to the town. So thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to John again.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we will move on to our second delegation, and it's a delegation from Aaron Dion on behalf of the Penetangwisheen Minor Hockey Association Renew Arena. So Aaron, if you are there.
I am. Thank you, Your Worship. Just trying to start my video, but can I share my screen? Would that work?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. Again, thank you, Worship and Council, and thanks to all who have joined us. I know there's several PMHA members on the Zoom call, but also watching live on YouTube. I'll just get to the point here. PMHA definitely supports a new building for a recreational facility. We have spent a considerable amount of time at our board meetings discussing this. All are in favor on the board. I've sent out several communications to our members, and everybody I've heard back from are in support of a new facility being built. And we've also received support from Beausoleil First Nation, from Chief and Council from Beausoleil First Nation, and they support the building of a new recreational facility, including a new arena. As I go through these slides, there's, I guess I divided up into needs and wants or desires. Right now, we are in need of a new rink. From our experience, we need an updated facility. Updated meaning Hockey Canada has a new program in place for our younger age groups. And they've moved to half ice games and practices. For the games, we often get 2 large teams or 3 teams coming into the facility. And when you have 18 children with their parents, young players, and the parents in the dressing rooms, it gets really cramped, and we don't have enough change rooms. The other point to that would be the parking lot as well, and then the facility staff who do a great job. They're trying to clean up as quick as possible, and there's no turnaround for those teams because all dressing rooms are being used. We need a safe and reliable arena, and some of our players, I wouldn't say we're injured because of the facility, but certain aspects of the boards, for example, some injuries occur because of boards that need to be replaced. There was a hole in a board in the far corner, and it was just repaired with plywood for a while. And then the point to dressing rooms, for us, we do have female players. We have a diverse group of players, and there's no dedicated space for female change rooms or players that are transgender. And often I've seen it, I've been involved in it, and we would usually use room number 6, but if there's a visiting team or if the Kings were using it when they were doing the retrofit to their room, we were asking our female players to change in the female change room in the lobby. And then I've also witnessed a female change room being asked, or female player being asked to change in the storage room. So if you're talking about need, and that would be absolutely a must from our perspective. It would be beneficial for our players. We're playing on a regulation size ice surface. We're praised for the quality of our ice, but we're also mocked for the size of our ice. And especially at the older age groups in junior C, it's a different game to play. It would be beneficial for our players to warm up, to have a place to warm up as well. During the game, spectators are in the stands, and teams have nowhere to warm up, and often are warming up outside. Again, this is a benefit, not a necessary need. If it's during a practice, if they're warming up for a game, and while another team's practicing on the ice, it's distracting for the players that are on the ice. And then the need for the parking lot. When you ask us what we want, what we need, and I'm going to move to what we want here. 2 ice surfaces would be ideal. I understand the financial impact it would cost, but I'm asking you to take a step back a bit here and have a little bit of foresight. It won't cost you that much more to put a second ice pad in, especially in the long term. You're going to use one Zamboni. You're going to use the same facility staff and so on. They might just be a little bit busier. So for us, having 2 ice surfaces means more ice time and more tournaments. And although Steve was talking about our numbers, I'm not sure where the evidence comes from, and the addition of 300 players. I understand that that's probably a provincial study that was done. For us, I'm just going to lay out where we are now and where we're heading. We typically have, in the past few years, we have between 260 and to 230 players. And we have 14 to 16 teams. And we have 14 dedicated ice times for practice. So that means it's typically in the evening, and teams will have a set time during the week for a 50-minute practice. We're trying to increase the amount of ice. That's one of our goals. And we have over the last few years. However, we need to use morning ice at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then 7 o'clock for a 50-minute practice. And then we're also sharing ice. So we're trying to make it work. It's not ideal, especially for some of our players that need to commute. Some of those players, that should be sleeping in a little later. But our goal is to get to the Hockey Canada's proposal or a recommendation of 2-to-1 ratio. So 2 games or 2 practices to every game that we play. We typically play 1 or 2 games a week. So that would mean we would need 4 practices per week. I'm not sure if we're ready for that. I'm not sure if families and our youth are ready for that. But that's where we're at. Back in 2008, we used approximately 600 hours of ice. 2019, we're up to 700. And then 2020, we budgeted for 900 hours. We didn't get to the 900 hours because of COVID, but we're planning on doing that this year. In the past 5 or 6 years or so, we've been using ice in Port Manickle. We've used between 50 hours and 30 hours of ice in Port. A lot of feedback from teams, especially in January, February, would be that they don't want to use Port because of it's outside, it's cold. So we would love to have more ice. Last year, we used 10 hours of ice in Midland, which, being a proud local boy, I struggle with that, but it is what it is, and we're seeking ice time elsewhere. We have teams that are playing or practicing in Midland during the summer as well. Looking ahead, our ratio rate that we would like to meet would be 3 to 2 for rep, same with AE, and then local league 2 to 2. So for every 2 games, they get 2 practices. Rep, you get 3 practices for 2 games. That's almost impossible if we're running with the current ice time allocated to PMHA. If we go to those ratios of 3 to 2 for rep, 2 to 2 for local league, and if we eliminate Port Ice and Midland Ice, we're looking at an additional 500 hours that we would rent. So that's additional 500 hours on top of the 900 hours that we have. And again, back to the shared practices, we typically don't share for midget. We tried it with Bantam and Pee Wee. It's too small of a rink to share practices. Adam, and obviously it did work. This is a big one. I was on a committee in Toronto when we were deciding on building a rink that was a multi-pad facility, and right from the get-go, it was determined that a single pad would just not do because it's not feasible to run tournaments. Our goal is to bring back the Winterama tournament, especially for a younger age group. We're also looking at hosting larger tournaments. International Silver Stick would be a great goal to look towards. There's also other tournaments that we can hold, invitational tournaments where we invite teams from outside of our area, and they would stay here. They would be forced to stay in a hotel. So the problem for us is not, should we build 2 rinks? It's, how are we going to build a hotel to house all these visitors coming into the town? Other ideas would be like puck and ball, puck and fish, or puck and curl kind of thing. So you're combining hockey tournaments with other sports and other activities in Penetang. This would help promote our town. It would help promote our culture, help promote our environment and the ecotourism that we have here. For example, bringing in money for the town. An example would be if we had 3-day tournament, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If we had 2 ice pads, we would be able to do 3 divisions of 8 teams each. That's 24 teams, and that's 408 families on average. And if you think those families, when they come into town for one tournament, it brings in about $800 per family. So you're looking at $325,000 for that tournament. If you have 3 tournaments in the year, that you're knocking on the door of $1 million coming into our town. I've seen it in small centers. If you look at Wasaga Beach, they're building 2 ice pads, and they have a smaller registration number than we do here in Penetang. Midland, same thing. They have a smaller registration number and they have 2 ice pads. And again, hosting a tournament on 1 ice pad, you would only be able to host one division, 8 teams each, not 3 divisions. Moving on, other considerations. I understand the cost amount, and being on council, it's an easy decision just to say it's not feasible. I'm really asking you to look forward into the future and to put our youth first. If the decision is made not to construct a multi-ice pad facility, I would say have some options open, make it adaptable. Perhaps we can have a half ice rink where we can practice, and those younger age groups can have their games and tournaments and jamborees. Or you make it adaptable where we can transform it from curling to hockey, or we can add to the building. But adding to the building 15, 20 years from now, like Steve said, I think is just a waste of money. If you're going to do it, let's do it now. And get our youth on the ice and bring these tournaments into our town. The benefits also go further than PMHA alone. If you think about all the different organizations that use our rink, girls hockey is increasing. That's big. Huronia lacrosse typically doesn't use the rink at all, but that's a possibility. Our ball hockey, the Penetang Midland Ball Hockey League, is world renowned. So if you host tournaments here in Penetang, people will come. People will know that this is an area for hockey, ball hockey, lacrosse, and then not to mention figure skating, Junior C Kings, and other old timers rec league and so on. I remember the old timers tournaments that used to be held here in Penetang, and there's something else. Also, having ice times available during the day for Waypoint and CNCC could, and retirees in the town could fill some of those empty time slots during the day. Next steps, I strongly recommend that this is done sooner than later. I know sometimes decisions are made on council and then there's a new election and then things fall off the table. But this is needed now. Our facility is falling apart, as Steve said, and we can't go anywhere else. If we start construction on the new facility and the PMCC is no longer in use, there's no ice time for us in Midland or elsewhere. And then further to that, there's a lot of financial support coming out post-pandemic. Trillium Fund, Hockey Canada Foundation, their Assist Fund, and Hockey Canada is pushing for new facilities. Ted Rennie, the
You just froze on us, Aaron. Sarah, are you able to assist or see what the problem is? Aaron is frozen.
Unfortunately, he is frozen. I'm not able to unfreeze him from my end.
Well, that's unfortunate that Aaron got frozen, but we will have to just move on, carry on, and if there's something more that he can bring back in at a later time, we will permit that. So very good report from Aaron in regards to the need for the community center. But we're going to move on to item 5, the section A, recreation and community services, and I will pass that on to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Your Worship. On our consent agenda this evening, we have two letters of hello.
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. I've just got lost here. We have 2 letters of consent or support for the new facility from the Penetang Sports Hall of Fame and Midland Minor Hockey. And the recommended action here is that the following consent agenda items, having been given due consideration, be received for information. Is there a move? I lost my screen here for some reason.
Are you able to get it back, Councillor Cummings?
Yeah, hang on one sec, Your Worship. For some reason, it's giving me a problem. There we go. Okay, so do I have a mover?
Yes, I will move.
Deputy Mayor, seconder. Councillor Sanama, does anybody wish to have this pull or any discussion regarding the two letters? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next on our agenda is matter B, which matters for consideration, and that's the Arena and Recreation Center Study Final Report, the RCS 2021-18. The recommended action is that the Arena and the Recreation Center study be received for information, and further, that staff be directed to continue to invest time in planning for option 2A, a new build, which includes curling and is outlined in the staff report. And finally, that staff return to the Committee of the Whole with additional information as it relates to long-term financial planning and implications of option 2A, a new build that includes curling. Before we get this on the floor, I need a mover? Deputy Mayor, second, and Councillor Sanama, are there any questions or concerns regarding this report? Councillor Vadaboncourt.
Thank you. As been mentioned earlier during the presentation, it's an excellent report. It's a really nice roadmap going forward. Our deputation raised some good points, some points that I've heard as well with respect to having a smaller pad available for practice. I also heard that from the figure skating club as well. They don't need a full size, but they need a smaller size where they can work on things. But that's something that certainly for the future that we can consider. These are very early days in this process. They're exciting early days, but they're certainly early days. And there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done. It's outlined in the motion with respect to the financial plan. It's going to take some careful consideration by council in terms of the timing of this new build. You saw the numbers there, $40 million, $44 million. That's a huge cost. And it's going to take some time for us to get there. But we need to start, and this is a start. It's an exciting start. And as I said, when we have the draft report submitted, it's a great document, and it's a great document that we can use moving forward. In response to my question earlier, we talked a little bit about programming, and some of the designs that were shown to us were very nice. They really give you a good sense of what the facility may look like, but there's still lots of work to be done on the programming end as well. We've heard lots of good ideas in our deputation and some of the correspondence we received and some of the input. So that design, or what we saw today in terms of the 2A and 2B, may change as we move forward and some of these program initiatives get fully considered and costed, and we look at how much we're able to afford as a community. So to conclude, Mr. Chair, I'm excited about this. This is a start of something that I think the community needs. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long process to get there, but with this motion, if it passes tonight, we're on our way. Thank you.
I think you're spot on, Councillor Vadaboncourt. As Steve has mentioned earlier, it is a longer process. This particular motion is asking that staff explore more and get some more details. However, we are grant ready, and the more pieces we put together for this puzzle, the better it is when a grant comes available from either the feds or the province. Mayor LaRue, you had a question?
Actually, a comment, Councillor Cummings, again, in regards to the report, I'm certainly in favor of it. And you know, we over the years, how many times that we have gone out to seek reports and get recommendations and so, and then the first thing we see is that it's shelved. And I think this is far too important to be shelved. I think it's a right move to have staff move on this to further develop and bring back to council reports that are dealing with building committee, building itself, changes as Councillor Wadimokara indicated, possible, finances, where it's available, what's not available, how we can go about it. But I think that it's crucially important that we move this process forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. Deputy Mayor Dubo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I certainly agree. 2A. I think we need to continue to explore our options. We need to look at our strategy to access government funding. We all know the phrase word grant ready or shovel ready. It seems to be extremely important. I too feel it would be an asset to our community. I also have to admit, $40 million is a lot of money for a small community, but I think we need to take steps forward. Recently, the government has been giving out a good portion. I think there was a community, is it not Bracebridge, that got something like 70% of the cost of their facility. That would be absolutely wonderful for us to be able to get that kind of money from our local levels of government. So yes, I think we should move forward. We need more information. And as Councillor Wadimokara said, things may change in the design of the project, but I think we need to look at all those options. So yes, I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any comments or other concerns? Councillor Senema.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate, I agree completely with George, with Councillor Wadimokara, our Deputy Mayor and the Mayor. I was on the steering committee and I've been very impressed with all the information that they've brought back to us. There are steps that we need to, obviously use going forward, including, as you said, a building committee, whether it's finance committee, looking at all the different options. And better to start now instead of waiting until we're in a position whereby we don't have a facility available at all. I'm certainly in favor of moving ahead and staff putting the time and effort into it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Senema. Councillor Klug.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the report is great, both the consultant report and the staff report. I know many groups need this. I want to say I'm not fully sold on the idea just because of the sticker shock that I'm currently experiencing, though I am going to vote in favor of the motion just so we can proceed and get the full financial picture. So I won't hold it back, but I am very cautious on this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your Worship, I see that Aaron is back on. Would there be any further comments before we call for the vote?
Truthfully, Councillor Cummings, I think that, from what I could see, that Aaron was certainly approaching the end of his report, and that we're quite aware of the need of minor hockey and other hockey and sports within the municipality, and we are moving in the direction from what I can see by the comments of council here now, that we will move forward with the option 2A, and these things will all be taken into consideration as we go down and form a building committee, and as Councillor Saint-Amand has indicated, probably a finance committee, and as Councillor Vadeboncoeur and the Deputy Mayor have both indicated, that we probably have a building committee that would look at different options or feasibility or whatever else may be brought forward. So I think that with all of that, we can probably just move on, and maybe you could finish whatever your report has to do and call for the vote.
Thank you, Worship. Before I call for the vote, are there any other concerns or questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Item 2 on our list is the Overhead Bridge Road Trailhead Construction Tender Award, RCS 2021-19. The recommended action is that the Overhead Bridge Road Trailhead Construction and Drainage Improvement Tender be awarded to CSL Group in the amount of $331,035.30, inclusive of HST, and that $49,307 from development charges and anticipated savings achieved in the RCS budget to fund a shortfall of the $19,307 and a $30,000 project contingency as outlined in the staff report. I will have the director speak to this, but I need a mover and a seconder. Put it on the floor, please. Mover?
I'll move.
Deputy Mayor, second. Councillor Vadeboncoeur, thank you. I'm going to ask for the director to make a comment on this particular tender. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this project has been a few years in the making, developing the trailhead on Overhead Bridge Road. We did receive 2 submissions to the tender. Unfortunately, it came in slightly over budget when discussing that with the engineers who gave us the probable costing. They said it was the earthworks and the asphalt work that came in greater than anticipated is where they the estimates fell off, but it is 19,000 over budget. And then we're also recommending that council approve a $30,000 contingency in the event that we run into glitches during the construction of the project. We have several funding partners, as you know, on board. So we have a grant from the Trans-Canada Trail, we have a grant from the county, and we have the Township of Tiny who have contributed to this project as well, and have some timelines that we are committed to with both of the grants. So that is why we're recommending that we move forward and that council approve the additional costs.
Thank you. Are there any questions or concerns for the director? Councillor Vadeboncoeur.
It's a really interesting project. I think it's needed in terms of providing the parking. Some of you may know I drive by that location twice a day and on weekends and whatnot. And over time, especially on weekends, I've noticed the parking spilling over onto Overhead Bridge Road and on Robert Street and on West Street. So I think the parking is needed. One of the things I have observed is that there's quite a mature hedge line. I think it's mixed between, taller cedars and shorter cedars and whatnot that kind of form a little bit of a visual barrier to the property to the, I'm going to say, west. And looking at the design, and I noticed that in the design there is some plantings that are proposed. I'm assuming that the existing row of somewhat mature hedges and whatnot will be removed. Can you advise if the replacement trees and hedges are going to be somewhat similar in size so that there's an equal buffer that's provided from the parking area to the adjacent residential unit? I believe it's residential there. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So the existing shrubbery and hedges that are on the site were planted by the property owner in front of at that location, and they're encroaching on town land. Staff have met with the owner of the property on a few occasions to advise of the project and the pending project and the encroachment, and provided him an opportunity to salvage his trees and move them. He did offer, actually, for the municipality, one of his concerns was that he wanted to continue to have a buffer between the front of his property and the parking lot. And as you noted, the designs have that piece. So he did offer that those could be recycled and used in the project. We did consult with the engineers, and unfortunately, they said it may even end up costing more to try and pull them out, save them, and then replant them. And then they also wouldn't warranty the project by utilizing products that they did not provide. As to the size, I'm not prepared to speak to that, but there will be a buffer that will exist.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Vademont-Court?
Thank you. Yeah, it does, Mr. Chair. I would just encourage us as we get through that part of the design phase that we look to, the quite large or larger size hedges and bushes, more mature type. I know they're a little bit more expensive, but I think a nice buffer there between the parking lot and the adjacent residential would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the director? I've lost my screen again. For some reason, my screen is playing games with me. Some reason my screen's playing games with me. I'm sorry. Is there any other question?
Councillor Cummings, we are still able to see you and we are still able to hear you.
Yeah, I just got back here. Thank you, Worship. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 2 no's. Motion is carried. Thank you. And last but not least, number C, questions from the media and the public. If there's anyone who wishes to ask a question from the public, please turn your camera on or speak up, please.
No one else.
Seeing none. Oh, Aaron, question?
I just wanted to apologize for my internet. Perhaps next meeting you guys can discuss better internet in Tiny Township. But, my apologies. I just wanted to thank everybody, but and finish by saying that we have a lot of members that will help fundraise for this and are in support of this. So thank you, and thank you to everybody that has gotten us back on the ice previous to this summer, and then also leading up. I know many of you were working with the health unit, so thanks for getting that. And I'm not being insensitive with the vaccine clinic. I really would like to pursue that, but it's important to get our kids back on the ice. So thanks for all that you do.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. That will move us on to 6, Section D, Planning and Community Development Services. Perhaps Councillor Vademont-Court, you could take that one.
Thank you, Worship. Certainly. On your agenda, there's a consent agreement pertaining to 1290 Sandy Bay Road. And there's a brief report, a location map, and the agreement. I'm not sure if the director is on the call here, but the severance, I believe, has been approved and subject to entering into the consent agreement and a couple of other conditions. And it's now, the consent agreement is now before council. And I see Owen has popped up. So Owen, good evening, good to see you. So perhaps you can take it from there and give us a quick overview on this particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just briefly introduce the consent agreement. So the consent agreement is part of a committee adjustment provisional consent that was originally granted at the end of August of 2020. It's for the property known as 1290 Sandy Bay Road, and it was for the creation of 5 new residential parcels. The last condition of approval to be accepted is entering into a consent agreement that includes a tree preservation plan for each lot, a grading plan, and details regarding water services for the properties. The owner has satisfied the town's requirements for all the plans and therefore have satisfied the condition. And the purpose of this report is to make a recommendation to enter into a consent agreement with the proponent.
Thank you, Owen. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Sandoval?
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, Owen. The water in that area, there's not a municipal service out there, is there? Like, my understanding is it's wells in that area, and yet the plan is saying that we're going to install water service laterals. So I was curious about that.
Thank you, Councillor Sandoval. And we do have water laterals that are installed along Sandy Bay Road and Gilwood Park Drive, where the consent is being sought. So there are, in fact, water laterals that are available for connection there.
Thank you, Owen. Any other questions? Madam Deputy Mayor?
Not a question so much, but this was thoroughly vented at the Committee of Adjustment meeting last month. So yes, there is water service there, Councillor Sandoval. It was taken over by the town some years ago. So it is operated by us, and there is capacity. So it should be, it's all set to go. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then may I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Cumming moves. Councillor Rose, that a bylaw be passed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the consent agreement for execution regarding the lands municipally known as 1290 Sandy Bay Road. We duly moved in second. Any further comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Question period from the media and the public. I don't see any, Your Worship, so I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Wedemarker, and I'm kind of happy to see that Councillor LaRose has finally become Councillor LaRose. I don't know if you were aware of it, Councillor LaRose, but we had 2 Councillor Mayets for a better part of the meeting tonight.
I did not notice.
Yeah. So I guess we got you back. We don't necessarily need 2 mics, do we, Dan?
Not at all.
Council, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good weekend, and looking forward to our next meeting. And we will keep you posted on all events.